Now, let's head to Round 7, 2016's episode of Lachie's Weekly Footy Roundup. For this episode, we'll be looking at the review of Round 6, the ladder after Round 6, and we look at our predictions for Round 7. Let's go. Friday night, North Melbourne and the Western Bulldogs at Etihad Stadium. Well, this is the game Lachie Hunter has been clotheslined by Lindsay Thomas. And in this one, North Melbourne got the job done by 16 points against the Dogs. In an absolute slugfest. The best player of that game was Lachie Hunter with 44 disposals and 715 metres gained. And 133 in fantasy. North Melbourne's best player was actually Scott Thompson at full back. 26 disposals and 9 marks. And a goal assist. That is unusual for... he had 115 points in fantasy. Anyways, the only multiple goal kicker to report in this whole game was Jared White with 4 goals. Well, if it wasn't for him, North Melbourne would have lost in this match. Well, safe to say, in this one, well, the only other time North Melbourne is ahead of Footscray is not just on the St Albans line. It's actually on the ladder after Round 6. Good joke, Western Bulldogs banner man. God, that was very funny. Anyways, Saturday afternoon, Melbourne. Sorry, just can't stop laughing about that banner. That's the only time North Melbourne should be out of Footscray, the St Albans line. That was a Thomas the Tank Engine reference, by the way. Now, anyways, Melbourne and St Kilda at Etihad Stadium. Well, St Kilda ruined Christian Petrarca's debut as they won by 39 points themselves. Wow, what a game from Nick Riewoldt. Christian Petrarca, he had an okay debut. 16 disposals. And he's 273 metres gained. I reckon he'll be a good player for the future. Blake Acres played a great game for the Saints. 28 and 2, 396 metres gained. Let's look at the goal kickers. Wow. Jesse Hogan, 7 goals for 7 goals at a losing side. Well, if he had kicked 3 more goals, he would have been the first player to kick 10 goals in a losing team since Wayne Carey in 1999. He kicked 10 that game against the Bombers. Tim Membry kicked 5 for the Winners. 3 goals for Nick Riewoldt and Josh Bruce. Jack Watts with 2. Jack Sinclair with 2. 2 goals to Sam Frost all the way from full back. And next game is Adelaide versus Fremantle at the Adelaide Oval. Oh my days! How long is Fremantle's decline going to go for? Will they ever win a game in 2016? Although Michael Walters played a great game for the Dockers, 29 and 3. 29 disposals, 3 goals and 7 tackles. 31 disposals and a goal and 8 tackles for Rory Sloane. Well, it seems like he can be capable of bringing extra responsibilities following Dangerfield's absence since he went to Geelong. Michael Barlow had another great game with 33 and 40 from Lachie Neale. These guys are starting to step up in the absence of Nat Fyfe. Well, I wouldn't be surprised if Lachie Neale lands a... Lachie Neale, he's basically pretty much hot property in the trade period right now in 2016. I reckon the best team that could be a good fit for him might be Port Adelaide. Anyways, let's look at the goal kickers. Eddie Betts with 4 for the Crows. So is Tom Lynch and Josh Jenkins. Although, for Footy Show on Channel 9 didn't do much reporting about the Crows. Not even on their Footy Show Stakes cartoons. And I've been watching some new ones. As for... Don't worry, Adelaide Crows. Well, at least Lachlan Brown's YouTube channel is here to report some Crows stuff. I'm not like Sam Newman, who just completely ignores the Adelaide Crows. Anyways, enough about my Crows rant. Enough about this rant. Let's move on to the other game, GWS and Hawthorn at Spotless Stadium. What was that from Hawthorn? You got away with so many free kicks, and now look what's happened. They've just... And their percentage is absolutely shocking. 91.8 for a reigning premier. Well, I think they're pretty much on the Bears. They've just clocked out. Heath Shaw, 29 disposals and 32 disposals and 11 marks. Lachie Whitfield, 28-2 for the Giants. Hawthorn's only best player is actually Jack Gunston with 5 goals. Speaking of goal kickers, Steve Johnson with 5 for the Giants, aka Stevie J. Rory Lobb with 4, Tom Scully with 3, Reece Palmer 3, Toby Green with 3 goals, and Jeremy Cameron. While Luke Bruce kicked 3 for Hawthorn. Lachie Whitfield and Paul Piopolo with 2 each for their respective clubs. Well, this could be GWS's breakout game. Geelong versus Gold Coast at Simmons Stadium. Oh my days. Poor old Gary Ablett. He's been carrying too many passengers. If I was Gary Ablett, I'd be requesting a trade back to Geelong right now. What was that for the Suns? 120 points. Absolutely shocking form from them. Well, this team's on fraud watch. Again. Paddy Dangerfield with 30 touches and 2 goals. He's had another solid game for the Cats. Joel Selwood with 32 touches and a goal. Daniel Menzel, 25 touches and a goal. Still taking things day by day in his comeback from injury. 30 disposals and 14 marks from Jimmy Bartel, the 2007 Brownlow medalist. Goes to show he still got it. 31-2 from Josh Caddy against his old side. 22 disposals and 2 goals from Darcy Lane. Anyways, it's moving on to the other goal kickers. 4 from Shane Kirsten, 4 from Tom Hawkins, Stevie Motlop with 3 goals, and 3 from Nakai Cockatoo in this game. Speaking of Nakai Cockatoo, I've basically known his I basically one time went to school with his cousins. Anyways, back to the goal kickers. Alex Sexton kicked 2 for the Suns, same with Tom Lynch. What was that from the Gold Coast Suns? How could you lose by 20 goals? Richmond versus Port Adelaide at the MCG. What was going on with Richmond? How on earth are they losing to a Port Adelaide team without a ruckman? They just dropped Matthew Lowe, man. They didn't even give Billy Frampton his debut. And he's a ruckman. Who are they putting in the ruck? No wonder they lost in the headouts. They were playing Justin Westhoff in the ruck. Anyways, back to Richmond's best on ground that game was Sean Gregg. 32 disposals and 2 goals. Dustin Martin's starting to become pretty good. 31 and a goal himself. 34 disposals across half-back for Bashahuli. And 539 metres gained. Anyways, to the goal kickers. Jack Rewalt, him and Sean Gregg were the only multiple goal kickers for the Tigers. For Port, 3 goals from Jarman MP, 2 to Aaron Young and Jake Need, and also Charlie Dixon. Well, maybe Port Adelaide could turn their season around after all. Anyways, now we move on to Sunday. Brisbane and Sydney at the Gabba. The Lions, they nearly won it. Oh, man. Whoa. The stretcher is on fraud watch this week. Justin Lapich was not very happy with the stretcher in the final minutes of play. That was the moment that cost Brisbane victory. They only lost by a kick. Although Dane Zorko had a great game with 33 disposals and a goal and 797 metres gained. Pierce Hanley with 25 touches and 2 goals. However, Sydney's best was Luke Parker with 29 touches and 3 goals. The Swans are playing Kurt Tippett in the ruck all game against Stefan Martin. And I think they didn't even play Callum Sinclair that game. Well, Sinclair was in the ruck, was playing a bit part role in the ruck. Buddy Franklin kicked 5 for the Swans. Another solo effort from him. 3 goals from George Hewitt. Alan Christensen with 3. 2 goals to Daniel Rich for the Lions. And so was also Ryan Lester kicked 2 for Brisbane. Sydney's other multiple goal kicker that game was Ben McGlynn. Next game. Carlton versus Essendon at the MCG. This is very boring to watch. 180 minutes of dull football. Wake me up when the game's over. Carlton just got their second win of the season. By just 15 points. Carlton's best on ground in that game was Daisy Thomas. 31 disposals and a goal. Well, he's back to his Collingwood best. Same with 32 and a goal from Bryce Gibbs. Well, Courtney Dempsey was Essendon's best player with 25 disposals and 451 metres gained. It was a very defensive game. Matthew Wright was the only multiple goal kicker for the Blues with 2. Essendon's multiple goal kickers were Mitch Brown and first-year player Darcy Parish. He's having a pretty good season so far as a rookie, following the suspension of most of their midfield due to the supplement saga in 2012. Next game we're moving on to West Coast and Collingwood at Optus Stadium. It looked close in the first few quarters, and then the last quarter was all West Coast. They ran away with it to win by 10 goals. If Josh Kennedy had kicked straight, he would have kicked 9. However, Mark McCraw had a great game, 27 disposals and 3 goals for the Eagles. Collingwood's best was Adam Treloar with 32 disposals and 10 tackles. Jack Crisp had 26 in a goal and 115 in fantasy. But the other goal kickers that game, Jamie Cripps kicked 3 for the Eagles. Scott Lysette with 2 for the Eagles. If you're coming on to any of my onto my shows in, like, say, 2022, Scott, I might have to challenge you to a trivia. Anyways, back to the other goal kickers. Darcy Moore with 2 for Collingwood. So is Mason Cox and Tim Broomhead with 2 each. And that's it for today's round of games. Well, North Melbourne seem very unstoppable at top of the ladder. Top of the ladder with 6-0. Second spot's the Cats. Oh my dear. Lord. Well, it's like only 1 win separating second and 8th. Well, Melbourne are in 9th so far. They had a pretty good percentage themselves. And if Jesse Hogan can keep kicking, showing the way how he can kick goals like he did against St Kilda, well, he might win the Coleman medal. Gold Coast are in 10th. Port sit in 11th. Well, it's a 2-win difference between 12th and bottom. And the team that's in last place is, of course, the Fremantle Dockers. The team that is still on fraud watch. Anyways, let's move on to round 7. Richmond versus Hawthorn at the MCG. I reckon the Hawks will get the job. Well, surely they can bounce back. I'm going Hawthorn by 17 points. I'm not kind of convinced after the way they played the previous week against the Giants. Collingwood and Carlton at the MCG. Well, this could potentially be Nathan Buckley's last game as coach of Collingwood if they don't turn things around. This same game could also potentially be Andy Maguire's last game as president. I'd better watch out if I were you, Collingwood. I'm going with Carlton to win this game by a point. Geelong versus West Coast at the Cattery. Of course, it's the Cats. Geelong by 40 points. As West Coast don't really like the travel. Sydney and Essendon at the SCG. Obviously, Sydney by 110 points. Gold Coast versus Melbourne at Metricon Stadium. It's a tough week for the Suns. Melbourne nearly got it done against the Saints. I reckon Melbourne will get the job done by 91 points. It's not so Super Saturday. Western Bulldogs and Adelaide at Etihad Stadium. That is actually the game of the night. I reckon the Crows might get it done in Melbourne against the Dogs. I reckon Adelaide might get the job done by a point at Etihad Stadium. Fremantle versus the Giants at Domain Stadium. No. GWS versus Peel Thunder. Or should I say the Fremantle Reserves at Domain Stadium. GWS by 27 points over the Fremantle Reserves. St Kilda versus North Melbourne at Marvel Stadium, at Etihad Stadium. I reckon the Kangaroos will win this one by 1 point. Port Adelaide versus the Brisbane Bears at Adelaide Oval. If Brisbane Lions keep playing this bad in 2016, well, I might as well just call them the Brisbane Bears or the Fitzroy Lions. I might have to call them Fitzroy winner in Melbourne and the Bears winner everywhere else. I reckon Port Adelaide will get the job done by 80 points. That's it for round 7, and we'll see you for round 8.